There's the kind of manager I call a seagull. When something goes wrong, they swoop in, drop their opinion, kind of mess with things, and then they fly off. And then they sit there and wonder why their team is exhausted.
Welcome to the Beyond Just Leadership podcast, where it starts from within and you learn to lead deeper, lead people, and lead well. Here's your host, Stephen Alfin.
You know, what a week it's been. It has been a lot of crazy things happening. I honestly want to say at the very beginning, thank you for all your support. For all those who are first-time listeners, who are coming back and listening again, thank you. All the support really matters. As long as I can connect with one person, that's really what I care about. But all of you, I do care about each and every one of you, so thank you. So thinking about last week, I talked a lot about confidence. Confidence is one of the biggest things of why I started building this again. Getting up out of bed every morning, PATC, let's tackle the world, let's build something incredible. I know what I'm building is incredible, and I just hope that it really touches everyone's life. In some small way, that would be miraculous to me. But the seagull mentality is fascinating. So how this came to be was I was actually at Zillow. As you guys know, I talk a lot about Zillow. But while I was there, I was sitting in this meeting and somebody brought up a seagull, or the mentality of a seagull. And it always stuck with me because it was more of a graphic representation. And as I've learned and grown, I've kind of changed it to more of what it is now, of just kind of don't swoop in and then leave. But it was a funnier saying back then. It was more of like a swoop and poop method, as a lot of times what seagulls do. They swoop in, they do that, and then they fly off. And so when you think of a manager, a lot of times when things start going wrong, they think, oh no, let me swoop in, let me go figure out what's going on, let me drop my opinions on everything, and then I'm going to fly off. And hopefully they're going to take my knowledge and they're going to fix it. A lot of times that's the mentality of a manager. But there's a better way to lead. And it really made me think about this a lot this last week of failure. So why it was a hard week this week is we had a lot of things going on in our own family. My wife was traveling with my oldest daughter. She was going to a camp. And so I was kind of working at the same time as trying to take care of the kids. And so a lot of times the mentality of parenting kind of goes into leadership just a little bit. I mean, I have 6 kids. It's taught me more about leadership than anything else. But what ended up happening is like you have to pick and choose certain things, but then you also have to let your kids learn. If I was just, hey, my kids were disagreeing with something and I swooped in, dropped my opinion and swooped out, it doesn't do anything. And so sometimes you just have to let them be and let them solve their own problems and be there for guidance. So they trust to come to you about something. So a lot of times whenever leaders kind of swoop in, do that, the last thing that individual wants to do is go back to them and actually kind of give them something of like, hey, we got to fix this. Because they're not building the trust with that individual. What they're doing is they're just saying that the stressful thing is more important, which you're creating a stressful environment because you're bracing for what's coming next. And you can probably equate to this that sometime in throughout your career, you've had this experience where a manager kind of swoops in, leaves. And so then you're always bracing for the next one of like, when's this next swoop going to happen? And usually it's when things start going wrong. They swoop in, try to fix it for you, then they fly off. But the problem is they're not really teaching anything. Like us as leaders, we don't teach anything when we're doing that type of swooping. What you do have to do is a book I love is I think it's Leaders Eat Last. I think that was the book with Simon Sinek. I'm thinking of all of them because I've read them all, but like that one specifically is you have to protect and absorb the noise is the right word above them. So let me give you an example. So, and you've maybe even experienced this in your own career. So let's take, you have a C-suite individual who's kind of flying in and communicating about things that has visibility on a lower level, very low level. What it does is it creates chaos. Because what you're doing is, if a C-suite or a senior leader are talking to individuals a lot further below them, they're creating fear. They're creating, especially when they're questioning things or doing those. If they're praising somebody, that's awesome. I actually am for that. They should come out and praise those people, especially in public. But whenever they're doing it from the standpoint of, hey, I'm going to question this individual, and it's very senior level, you're not even passing through the right channels, the other leaders, because the leaders are supposed to help create a barrier and some protection, create safety. That's the biggest thing. That's the real thing that leaders do, is they absorb this chaos and they try to protect their direct reports as much as they can from the chaos above them. So you can imagine that, like, if a company has financial issues, or they're talking to their board about something, or they're doing some change management, which they're going to make some changes, the last thing you want is that knowledge to start creeping down into the lower levels, because that creates the chaos. And so it's really one of those things of you don't want to be bracing for that, or always wonder, because the environment, I always talk about this a lot, your attitude and everything reflects what the team is feeling. So if you walk in to a meeting with all this information, you drop it, you're going to start to create panic within the team too. So it's the big thing is, like, you just, instead of them preparing to brace for that next swoop or brace for the chaos, just create this circle of safety. That's Simon Sinek, what he talks about is they have to feel safe. They have to have an environment where they feel comfortable coming to you about something and knowing you're not just going to go fix it and solve it, but you're going to listen and you care about them and care about the things that they're doing. And then if there is some problem, rather than just swooping in and trying to fix it, it's go at the actual person and have a real conversation, like, because they're a human being. Maybe there's a reason why. The empathy piece comes into this more than anything else. So I think about this all the time of Zillow. We had the mentality of turn on the lights. So there's a big distinction between leadership turning on the lights to things and giving them information versus giving them information that creates chaos. So you can imagine in the world we live in, most of you or some of you might have gone through layoffs. So it's the thing of, if you know some things are happening, it just creates chaos. And then what happens is people quietly quit. They start doing things they don't want to do. It's because you haven't created this circle of safety and trust within the company. And so really, as leaders, we have to do that. We have to do that as much as possible. And a lot of times it comes down to sacrifice. So one of the things I loved in Simon Sinek's books is he always brings in the military to this. But a lot of times the leaders in the military groups, first of all, they go with servitude. Servitude is one of the biggest things that I love about leadership, because you can't just, like a seagull mentality, swoop in, give direction, and swoop out, and not even be there for support either. So the seagull mentality can be a multifaceted thing. It's like, if there's a fire, or hey, you're going to change something, you swoop in, you drop it, and you leave, and then you don't provide support. So you're just flying off. Good leadership is you get on their level and you're actually with them in it. Like, look at the military. A lot of the Marines, their leaders are themselves, and sometimes they have a head leader, but he's with them on the battlefield. He's not sitting back behind. And then the always thing is no man left behind is a common thing too. It's these types of things they create a circle of safety amongst themselves. The leader is almost as if they're one of the group. And that's the big thing that you kind of have to do with leadership. You can't just be this individual who's above everybody. No, you have to be with them, but you also have to help them become leaders themselves. But also it's a little bit of sacrifice for yourself, because what you're doing is essentially allowing them to learn. And whenever they do something well, you're praising them. You're sacrificing yourself so that you can praise them, even though maybe you were a big part of it. But then the other sacrifice thing that is, if the team does something wrong, this is also creating the circle of safety. Who takes the blame? The blame goes right back to the manager. They should be taking the blame and not the individuals. Maybe, yes, the individuals made mistakes, but that's true leadership, is that leader standing up and say, you know what, I did that wrong. I didn't communicate effectively, or I didn't do this wrong. Okay, yes, maybe your direct reports did do something wrong, but that's the point of the sacrifice, is you do that in private. You don't do it in public, but you take the blame. But again, in retrospect, whenever things go well, you praise them individually, you praise the group, you give specific feedback about that. So it's kind of one of those things of sacrifice it's hard to kind of put your mind around, going from an individual contributor to a leader. But it's so valuable and so important. So one of the things too is the biggest new manager trap is wanting to swoop in and fix it. But that's not what you're creating. Is if you swoop in and fix it, you're still acting as the individual contributor. And you don't need more of that. What you're trying to build is problem solvers and thinkers that they can do on their own, because that helps them become their own leaders as well for the future. You don't want them to just complete tasks. You want them to think bigger. So you can't just swoop in, make a decision for them, because then they don't think. They're just task completers. They're not actually thinking of the next thing. So that's a big thing I love. Thinking back to an actual manager that I had, I think when I think of all my managers, the one that I think of this the most is the first one I had right out of college. Because it made an impression on me of hey, this is not what I want to be. So I actually was in healthcare at the time, right out of college, working on some financial things. And our manager, who was managing our team, had this mentality of, we just had to complete our task. And if we didn't complete our task, we weren't doing our job. And so sometimes I would bring problems, or I would think bigger and try to solve all these things. And a lot of times my manager would first push me down and say, don't think that way. So really, problem solving wasn't one of the things that this manager was teaching. But whenever there was a problem, this individual was the first to swoop in, drop their opinion. Hey, this is how I would do it. This is what you should do, blah, blah, blah. Didn't even ask questions, just gave us direction and then flew off. So it's like, oh, wait. If I do it this way, though, if I think they didn't want that. They wanted us to do it that way. And that was it. So what was interesting is I got to my mid-year and year-end mid-year check-in and annual review. It was fascinating because the conversation was, I was leading the team in the numbers and all these other things. And it was fascinating because they asked me the question, how do you feel like you're doing your job? And I said, I'm doing fantastic. I'm exceeding expectations. And the individual actually responded back and said something along the lines of, no, you're not. You're not exceeding expectations. You're doing what you're supposed to. And to actually exceed expectations, you have to be perfect. And I'm like, well, this is fascinating. But also on top of that, the individual was basically telling me that I need to keep listening to them and keep just going through the motions. And so speaking to my mentor at that time, I didn't really connect the seagull of them swooping in, kind of telling us what to do all the time and then flying out, not really helping us become more than just a thinker. But as I went throughout my career and I saw this seagull thing, I was like, oh, interesting. That person kind of did that. All my other leaders kind of did it in a roundabout way, but not as bad or could be worse. But that was the one that impressed me the most, of like, hey, I want to be better. I want to help these individuals think on their own, problem solve on their own. Let them kind of fly on their own more than anything else. It's the same mentality that I teach my kids on a daily and weekly basis, or I try. It's so valuable and so important. So that's the biggest thing, is like, you think of safety, you think of chaos. And I just think of this week, and, you know, sometimes in life, you struggle, and that's okay. I don't expect my parents to swoop in. I don't expect my wife to swoop in. A lot of times we're on our own when you just think of us individuals. And so you think to yourself, where's your base? What do you really believe in? What do you really care in? Where does that confidence, where's the PATC come from? And you kind of have to think long and hard about it. Because once you're good with yourself, you as a leader are going to be in these situations where you're going to be alone and you're not going to know what to do. Yes, there's individuals you can always reach out to ask for advice, or to go to hopefully your leader you can reach out to, and you have built this circle of safety. But sometimes you're not going to have that. And so the biggest thing you can do is really be with your team and be vulnerable and create a space, because a lot of times your direct reports have fantastic ideas. Not to just swoop in and correct, but to actually take a second and listen to them. This last week I was recording just some videos on difficult conversations and things like that we'll cover later. But what came up is a lot of just different memories to me of instances where I actually opened up, or I had individuals direct reports open up to me. And a lot of times it was in those moments, me as a leader, I was like, I don't know what to do in this situation. I can reach out, but a lot of times it's like, think for yourself for a second. What should you do? And it's okay to, sometimes I even do this with my own kids, but it's okay to go to your direct reports, and in my case, sometimes my kids, and ask them for their advice. So, hey, what do you think about this? And actually listen to them and listen to their advice, because they have fantastic ideas that can really help. Your direct reports were hired for a reason. They're human beings with great ideas and have been doing this job and operating at a level that it's okay to ask those questions. So don't be that seagull. Don't swoop in. Don't try to fix things, but instead watch from above. And then when it's the right time to go in with them, have that servitude mentality, but be that leader that they trust, that they can go to and have those difficult conversations and bring you problems, and not just brace for that next swoop and have that stressful feeling. So the big thing is here that I have awesome courses that I've built out. I'm still fine-tuning them, but I have a couple out. I've got some awesome things in the works too that I'm really excited about. My app is so close, guys, so close to being finished. I had to revamp it a little bit. And so please share this with your friends. I'm hoping to connect with, just change one leader, one manager to become a leader. I've done my job. Or change one person's mentality. I've done my job. That's all I want. I want everybody to really look at people for who they are. I want them to lead deeper, and I want them to lead people and lead well. That is my hope. And so again, defend your people from the pressures above. And remember, lead deeper, lead people, and lead well. See you in the next one.